we get to 60. والقواعد من النساء الذين لا يرجون نكاحا فليس عليهن جناح أن يضعن ثيابهن غير متبرجات بزينة وأن يستعففن خير لهن والله سميع عليم. Now, so this is 60. So, and know that this is Muhammad Asad's translation. And women advanced in years who no longer feel sexual desire incur no sin if they discard their outer garments, provided they do not aim at a showy display of their charms. But even so, it is better for them to abstain from this, and God is all hearing and all knowing. This ayah we will pause with for a little bit because it actually raises a number of issues that are very interesting. So, women who are not, there's al-qawa'id. Now, does qawa'id mean women who don't have sexual desire? Does it mean women who no longer, who are post-menstrual, huh? Menopausal. Yeah, women who are menopausal. Or does it mean women who are no longer under the object of desire, like they're not sexually desirable? There's an interesting discussion about what qawa'id means. But, so there is an exception, and let me tell you about some of the reports that perhaps would help us understand the context of this ayah. Okay, so we have a number of reports as usual, but among the in many different versions, but that Imra'at Huzaifa bin Yaman, his wife, who was an older woman, and that she had a servant boy, his name was Muslim, and that Muslim was in the market one day, and people noticed that he had henna on his hands. This henna, what's henna in English? Henna, okay. And so they asked him, "Why do you have henna in your hands?" I mean, normally men didn't do that. And Muslim said, "Well, I was doing khidab. Khidab is where you do the henna for in a woman's hair. I was doing khidab for Huzaifa's wife, for the woman I work for, and that some people in Medina." And it's very likely that it was among the muhajir who said, "Well, is this permissible that you're doing khidab for this woman?" And then that Imra'at Huzaifa, she is asked about this, and her answer is, "Innama ana min al-qawa'id min al-nisa," that I am among these women who are in the qawa'id category. And in some versions of this report, that they asked the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet says it's okay because she is amongst the Qawad. We have, when other early, not going back to the Prophet, but going back to early authorities, about what is meant by يَضَعْنَ ثِيَابَهُنْ, that they may take off, because literally يَضَعْنَ ثِيَابَهُنْ is to take off their clothes. But we read this and we say, well, it can't be take off their clothes. It must be take off their outer garments, exactly as Muhammad Asad translated it. Because literally, yadana thiyabahun means you may remove your clothes. غَيْرَ مُتَبَرِّجَاتٍ بِزِينَةٍ, as long as you are not in a state of tabarruj. But we want, here again, it's the reasonable reading of text. So you say, no, it might be, it must be, they may remove some of their clothes. So in other words, they may wear less. So when some of the early authorities were asked about this, and they said, well, they may take off and keep on what اللبس الرقيق or اللباس الرقيق, light clothes. So a permission for a قواعد من النساء to be less concerned with covering. And note, it mentions thiyab, that less concerned with, but without any specification of detail, as long as that there is no tabarruj bizina. So what is the natural meaning of this? That as long as they are not engaged in flouting or bringing undue attention to themselves. Remember, tabarruj comes from the word baraja or al-barij, which is a ship in the sea, the way a ship stands out in the water. And when they define the tabarruj, linguistically, التبرج is تكلف إظهار ما يجب إخفاؤه. تكلف إظهار means that you go out of your way to show. You are bringing, that expression in English will say, undue attention. Meaning, say, look at me because I want the extra attention. So it is as if قواعد من النساء is saying, you can be, as long as your objective or your behavior is not to bring attention to yourself, you can in fact be less concerned about that element of your clothes being a cause of fitna, or your lack of clothes being a cause of fitna. There is a report attributed to Aisha which is really interesting. Aisha was often a legal authority in her late life. And so we have a lot of legal opinions that reached us from Aisha. And Aisha is asked, ما تقولين في الخضاب والنفاض والصباغ والقرطين والخلخال والخاتم الذهب والثياب الرقاق. So Aisha is asked, what do you think, or asked about ornaments that women wear, including things like what was the equivalent in our modern age of makeup, including earrings, including bracelets, and lighter clothes. And here's a very interesting. So the response Aisha gives is فقالت يا معشر النساء قصتكن كلها واحدة أحل الله الزينة غير متبرجات. She responds, women, all you women, يا معشر النساء, women folk, قصتكن كلها واحدة. Now that's a very interesting response. Is that it's like saying, I keep hearing from you a lot of questions about a lot of details, when in truth it all comes down to the same thing. Like saying, the bottom line is, Allah permitted zina but forbade tabarruj. Now it's very interesting because if you actually look at the commentaries about this report from Aisha, Muslim male jurists commented on this report. They turned this report as if Aisha is saying, stop asking about all these things because all these things are haram. But if they're reading, this is not what Aisha is saying. What she is saying is, you keep asking me about all these things, get the point. Allah permitted zina. Allah permitted you to have adornments, like the zina that Allah says that we should adorn before a masjid and so on. But not tabarruj, which begs the question, well, what is tabarruj? Well, go back to the notion of the ship in the ocean. Tabarruj, and I think innately we if we are honest with ourselves and we are not giving way to our hawa, our whim, and our desire for attention, our desire for whatever, is when you turn the attention, instead of being the attention towards your personality, towards your intellect, towards your spirit, you are focusing the attention on your looks. That is tabarruj. When you bring darkness rather than light. When you say, look at me, I'm pretty, and as Sharif reminded me recently, that there are a lot of girls that have serious psychological problems because of the beauty standards that we set in society. Well, when you underscore these beauty standards through tabarruj, and you cause the type of materialism and commercialism that has become the plague and disease of our society, that's darkness. And I think in your heart, you know it's darkness. Sure, your shaitan comes and says it's okay because of this reason, it's okay because of that reason, but it's okay. But you know when you are doing tabarruj. You know. And this is not just women, by the way, because it equally applies to men. You know when you are, sitting there saying, look at my muscles, look at my sexy figure, admire my, I don't know what. Tabarruj is shamelessness instead of humility. The anti-tabarruj potion is humility. When you value modesty rather than immodesty. Every time you are saying, look at me, even is, in my opinion, there is even a tabarruj al-aqli. That when you are flouting your intellectual muscles, this is a much bigger topic. I mean, let's leave it to another. But when you are flouting your intellectual muscles just to show how, like for instance, you are talking and you keep quoting left and right out of context, people that add nothing to the actual argument, except that you're saying, look how smart I am. That's tabarruj fikri. It's shameless. It's against modesty. If I'm talking and I keep every 2 seconds pointing out my connections and who I know, and that's tabarruj. When Allah says la tabarruj, when Allah says don't do tabarruj, Allah is saying don't do what contributes to the darkness. And what contributes to the darkness? It's immodesty, lack of humility. Instead of honoring privacy, you're violating privacy. You're saying, instead of things being, I'm satisfied with things being good enough for my family, you're saying, no, look at me. I want to share my private things with the public. It is exactly the type of mentality that doesn't honor the sanctity of people's life and talks about slanders people, is exactly the type of mentality that would commit, would openly brag about fornication and adultery or do it in front of four witnesses. It is exactly the type of brash mentality that doesn't think people are entitled to their privacy and would love to just storm in or to spy. It is, in a word, all against Nur. In a word, it's all against light.